the problems that you're trying to solve are so big and require a team, they don't all fall on one person. Whether or not you hit your goals isn't dependent on how long hours you work. Great way to kill and burn out a really great team is to send them in 20 different directions. I'm Kyle Racki, CEO of Proposify, and I've been running a business for the past 15 plus years since I was 24, and Proposify for the last 10 years. And so what I like to do is just share some of the lessons that I learned across product, marketing, sales, everything that I've learned running a business. So I was watching Diary of a CEO, which had Mark Randolph, who was the first CEO of Netflix before Reed Hastings. They were both co-founders, I believe, of Netflix. But he had asked him on the interview, how important is it to work hard if you're a CEO? And he gave this analogy that I thought was great, that I'll paraphrase, which is basically when he used to travel a lot on planes for business, he used to fly every single week, and that he was just habitually late. He was always getting to the airport much later than he should have, and that he would have to run to his gate to catch his plane. And he made the comparison here by saying that basically when he ran, he would sometimes make the flight and he sometimes wouldn't, right? It was more or less random. It depended on so many factors that eventually he realized he didn't actually need to run, because he was either going to make the flight or he wasn't. Running didn't really make much of a difference. And so he compared that to, like, in the early days of building a business, it's important to work really, really hard and work long hours and all that kind of stuff to get it off the ground because you don't have any resources. But then at a certain point, it really doesn't matter. There's no need to work long, hard hours as much because, eventually the problems that you're trying to solve are so big and require a team. They don't all fall on one person. Whether or not you hit your goals isn't dependent on how long hours you work. So I want to talk about that a little bit, just to share my own perspective. Really, I mean, for the last, I'm going to say 10 years since we got Proposify off the ground, even in the startup days, I wasn't working every weekend. I wasn't working 12-hour days. Sometimes you would, but I always found that the quality of the work would generally suffer anyway. Like if you're working from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., those last 4 hours are not highly productive. And there was really, I think, a lot of hustle culture that got built up that, people still debate and talk about online of like, is hustle culture good or bad? And I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer in terms of, if you're an early stage startup, you're probably going to have to work your ass off. And if you're trying to get a business off the ground, when I got my first business off the ground, it was my freelance business, and I was working full-time at an agency, and the only time for me to start to build that freelance practice was to work evenings and weekends. So for about a year straight, I worked every evening and every weekend to get my freelance business off the ground. But then as soon as I was full-time into it, I still worked a lot, but I didn't work that hard. And I found that I've worked not as many hours sort of the further into business I get, and it's not because there isn't a lot to do. It's just that eventually you can't outwork the problem. If the biggest constraint in your business is, let's say, product related, then you are never going to be the only person who builds that product. You're going to need a team of designers and engineers to do that. And so really your leverage starts to become not how hard can you work, but how closely can you align those teams on solving the right problems, on staying really, really focused. And that doesn't take 12-hour days to do. It's just really about shifting your mindset and your focus around this doesn't depend on me. I'm not the only person here who can do the work. I need to make sure that I'm getting the best people that I can on the team, and I'm giving them the right focus and priority. Because what great way to kill and burn out a really great team is to send them in 20 different directions and not give them any kind of focus or priority. And I think the best thing that you can do as a leader or as a manager is get the best people that you can on your team and get them really tightly focused and aligned around the most important problem to solve, the actual constraint, the real constraint that's holding your business back. Mark Randolph made the point is that the real solution to the problem was not running to catch his flight or running to the gate. It was show up earlier. It was the choices he made earlier in the process that actually got the results. And so that is so important in a business, is your highest point of leverage as a leader is the decisions that you make for the business or for your particular department. And that really is what strategy is, right? Strategy is a series of choices, because if you can choose 10 different options and you decide to choose all 10 of them, then that is not a strategy. A strategy is saying, out of all those 10 options, we're going to pick that one because it's going to unlock other opportunities and other choices that need to be made. And I think the more that you can live in the strategy, live in the clouds and the dirt, as Gary Vee likes to say, right? So the strategy is like the clouds, and then the dirt is the day-to-day execution. And I think the more you can stretch yourself between those two worlds, that ultimately is what's going to move the needle in your business, and it's not going to be how many hours you can work. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. I share advice just like this in my newsletter, Inside Proposify. You can get it by clicking the link down below.